Welcome back to Find the Juice. We're talking about the second round of the NBA playoffs, and just so you know, we're 6-1 in our first round picks with those lousy Lakers, ruining my perfect pick streak to start the playoffs. Even though they did everything I told you they would do, they just sucked at it. We're still waiting on the results of Golden State versus Houston. I didn't know Golden State was going to have Steph Curry, Jimmy Butler, and Jonathan Kuminga hurt, so now it's 7 games. So now, let's get the second round started and sweep that one since the Lakers are out and they won't mess this up. Real quick, let's recap those first round series. The Bucks versus Pacers first. Now the Pacers knocked the Bucks out of the playoffs in 5 games. The Bucks were shorthanded with Damian Lillard missing the first game of the series. And then remember, everybody was saying, oh, Bucks will be fine once Dame gets back. But Dame returned in game 2 and struggled from the field like we said he would, shooting 31% from the field and 25% from 3. Oh, but maybe he was just cold because he was hurt. He's working himself back in. But wait, game 3, he went 2 for 12 from the field and 1 from 8 from 3-point range. Gary Trent Jr., another Blazers legend, picked up the slack in Game 3, scoring 37 points and collecting 4 steals to help the Bucks win their only game of the series. The Bucks then lost Dame for the upcoming season when 6 minutes into the game, Dame tore his Achilles. Now, this is a Dame household. We love Dame in this house, and we know the cards are against him, returning from this injury when he's 36 years old, but we hope for a quick recovery for Dame time. On the other hand, the Pacers were second among all playoff teams in field goal percent and 3-point shooting, and they turned the ball over the third least amount of times among all teams in the playoffs. We saw a balanced scoring attack from Indiana with 5 players taking at least 10 shots per game in the series. This helped Indiana's offense as Tyrese Halliburton struggled shooting during the series, where he shot 42% from the field and only 27% from 3. And next, let's recap the Cavs versus Heat series real quick. The Cavs knocked the Miami Heat out of the playoffs real easy in a series sweep where Cleveland won 3 of 4 games by 20 points or more. On average, the Cavs won each game by 30.5 points. This is thanks to the Cavs having the best offensive rating in the playoffs. This is a stat that measures how many points a team scores for every 100 possessions they have. They also led all playoff teams in defensive rating, which measures how many points they allow per 100 possessions their opponent has. Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell led the way for Cleveland, each scoring 24 points per game. Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell led the way for Cleveland, each scoring 24 points per game, and both on fire shooting by shooting well over 40% from 3-point range. A sleeper was Evan Mobley, who had himself a nice series by shooting 60% from the field and 47% from 3, while also grabbing 7 rebounds and collecting 1 steal and 1 block per game. If anybody had any questions about whether or not Cleveland is the real deal, this series should have put those questions to bed, as they dominated both sides of the ball against one of the best game planning and in-game and after loss game adjusting head coaches in the NBA. Now let's break down this series, the Pacers versus Cavs. Now, surprisingly, even to me when I looked it up, Indiana won the season series 3-1, with Indiana winning by an average of only 4 points per game. The final game of the series did not really involve any starters, as it was the end of the season. The one game Cleveland did win, Indiana didn't have Tyrese Halliburton. While we broke down the first round of the playoffs against the Bucks, we talked about Indiana's 3-point defense. This shows up again in the season series against Cleveland, where the Cavs shot only 33.5% from 3. If that was their season-long average from 3, they would have been the second worst team at shooting threes in the NBA this season. This is huge because Cleveland was actually second in 3-point shooting while taking the 4th most attempts So immediately we see that Indiana has the ability to take away Cleveland's first offensive game plan. A spot for Cleveland is the fact that they are the fourth best spot up shooting team in the NBA, and Indiana was quite literally absolute butt cheeks defending spot up shooting attempts. They allowed the third highest field goal percent defending spot up shots in all the NBA. This makes Ty Jerome a sneaky play in player prop bets or daily fantasy lineups. He's 11th in the NBA in field goal percent on spot up shots. Also, Dean Wade has 57% of his shot attempts were spot up shots, ranking fourth in the NBA. Some other things Cleveland likes to do is running the pick and roll, which they did the most in the NBA and were the second best at running those plays. Indiana was the 10th best defense against the pick and roll, probably because the athleticism of Miles Turner and Pascal Siakam, which gives them the ability to switch on to smaller players defensively. Indiana loves running in transition, where they did so the sixth most in the NBA and had the second best field goal percent in transition. The problem is that Cleveland is the fourth best defense against transition offense. Indiana, like Cleveland, likes running the pick and roll and does a really good job at it. Cleveland was middle of the pack during the season at defending the pick and roll, which is an outlier compared to the rest of their defensive numbers. This could be a spot Indiana attacks Cleveland. Cleveland looked great against Miami's pick and roll, but you have to realize that Miami was near the bottom of the league in their scoring efficiency running the pick and roll this season. I feel like everyone is looking past this series and just assuming that Cleveland's gonna go to the Eastern Conference Finals. But this matchup is a nightmare for Cleveland. Indiana's guards match up very well with Cleveland, and Indiana's big men are just as athletic and quick as Cleveland's. I think this series comes down to if Cleveland can keep Halliburton contained like they did during the season and not allowing other guys to step up, and if Darius Garland can get going against Indiana, as he had a hell of a time against Indiana during the regular season, shooting under 30% from three against the Pacers. I'll take Cleveland to win this series only because they have home court advantage. And the fact that Ty Jerome and DeAndre Hunter should do well coming off the bench to keep any lead that Cleveland could have intact while Donovan Mitchell is resting on the bench. Yep. Now, let's talk Nuggets and Thunder, and let's start, of course, by recapping both of their first round series. We'll start with the Grizzlies versus the Thunder. The Thunder swept the Grizzlies, scoring the second most amount of points per game in the first round of the playoffs and allowing the fourth least amount of points per game during the first round of the playoffs. The Thunder also set an NBA playoff record by winning game one by 51 points. SGA struggled offensively, shooting only 40% from the field and 25% from three-point range during the series. The slack was picked up by Jalen Williams, who shot 54% from the field, and by Chet Holmgren, who shot 42% from deep. It looked like the Thunder struggled on the road, where they were 9th out of 16 teams in shooting and 14th shooting from three in the playoffs. This also shows as OKC won by an average of 35 points at home, but only 4 points while in Memphis. This is where the adage defense travels showed its face, as they forced 11.5 steals, first in the NBA playoffs on the road in the first round. They also held Memphis to under 40% shooting while on the road, which was first in the playoffs. And finally, the Thunder held Memphis to under 100 points in 2 of the 4 games they played. Ja Morant did suffer a hip injury in Game 3, but Memphis still almost stole that game. He also missed game where Scottie Pippen Jr. picked up the slack by grabbing 11 rebounds as a point guard and putting in 30 points. In the end, there was 21 turnovers, and that was their demise and what led them to getting swept by the Oklahoma City Thunder. Next, let's do a quick recap of my favorite series, the Clippers versus the Nuggets. To me, this was the best series in the first round. The series went 7 games with only a few double digit victories. There's a 1 point difference in points per game between the teams. The Clippers did a great job limiting Denver's transition game, which is what we spoke about before this series started, as Denver was one of the best transition offenses and the Clippers were one of the worst transition defenses in the NBA this season. Denver still did a great job scoring in transition, but the Clippers really limited the Nuggets' transition opportunities. The difference in this series came down to Denver's ability to shut down the Clippers' isolation plays. The Clippers actually led the NBA in isolation play frequency, which means they ran the most amount of isolation plays per game in the NBA. James Harden, who we all know is ISO God, ISO King, only shot 32.5% in isolation, which made him the 13th worst player in isolation in the entire NBA playoffs in the first round, which is terrible because he attempted isolation at the third highest rate in the first round of the playoffs. Nikola Jokic averaged a triple-double in this series with 24 points, 12 rebounds, and 10 assists. We also saw vintage Jamal Murray, when I used to call him Baby Dame, with 23 points per game while shooting 48% from the field and 40% from deep. Now, let's break down this Nuggets versus Thunder series in the second round. This series, everyone should be paying attention to because it's the top 2 MVP candidates for this season, which is Nikola Jokic and SGA. These teams split the season series with 3 of the 4 games ending in double-digit victories. The Thunder were close to taking the series in the final matchup, but Denver came from behind to win the game and snap OKC's 7-game winning streak at the time. The Thunder were the second best 3-point defending team in the NBA this season, which will probably make you think this is a cheat code to getting to the NBA Finals. But the Nuggets took among the least amount of threes in the NBA this season. The Nuggets took the most amount of shots at the rim, as they like to use Aaron Gordon, Christian Brown, and Russell Westbrook to cut to the rim while Jokic has the ball in the high or low post, and they like to finish at the rim in transition. OKC was the best team at defending the rim and top 3 at defending teams in transition, which is also bad news for Denver. Jokic destroyed OKC this season, averaging 25 points, 16 rebounds, and 12 assists, but with no real backup besides Michael Porter Jr., as Jamal Murray struggled against this Thunder team during the season. Oklahoma City was one of the top 3-point shooting teams in the NBA in terms of attempts and field goal percent. They also like to shoot from the paint and mid-range. This bodes poorly for the Nuggets as they finished the season near the bottom at defending all 3 of those zones. OKC likes to run isolation, obviously, with SGA. Denver finished 12th at defending ISO players during the season, but like we brought up earlier, they did a great job at defending Harden in isolation in the first round. OKC is also one of the best pick and roll teams in the NBA. Denver actually allowed the 4th lowest field goal percent while defending the pick and roll. OKC shoots spot up shots more than anything, where they're middle of the pack at converting. But Denver was literally the worst in the NBA against spot up shooters. They were a bit better in the playoffs, but with playing good isolation defense on Harden probably helped us a lot, along with the lack of shooters the Clippers have. This should not be the case against OKC, as they have more players who are capable of spreading out the floor. Overall, I have to take OKC with Hartenstein and Chet Holmgren healthy to defend Jokic, who we've seen have problems against teams with Twin Towers, big men, out in their starting lineup. The closest examples were against Minnesota last season in the playoffs and against Minnesota in the playoffs the year Denver went to the NBA Finals. along with OKC's elite defense and Denver's lack thereof. I won't say it'll be easy, as Denver can slow down OKC scoring if they show up any night not being able to hit shots from three, but I can't see a path where Denver wins this series. And finally, we're going to talk about the series everybody's going to talk about, the Knicks and the Celtics. But real quick, let's break down the first round. First, we'll talk about the Celtics versus the Magic. The Celtics beat the Magic in 5 games in the first round of the playoffs. This series was more competitive than anyone thought it was going to be. Like we spoke about in our last NBA playoff video, this series should excite people about the future of the Orlando Magic, as they're just another scorer away from being even more competitive. Jason Tatum finished the last 3 games in this series averaging 36 points, 10 rebounds, and 6 assists. Derek White only hit his 2.5 threes made player prop in game 1, where he hit 7 3-pointers and put up 30 points. Banchero put up an impressive 29.4 points per game, but Franz Wagner struggled from 3, only shooting 19% for the series. Now, the more exciting series, the Pistons versus the Knicks. The Knicks beat the Pistons in an exciting 6-game series. Only game 1 was decided by double digits, with games 3 through 6 being decided by a single possession. We saw the Knicks survive game 1 by overcoming a 21-0 run by the Pistons. Then we got to see the Pistons a 15 playoff game losing streak in game 2. Jalen Brunson showed he's the most clutch player in today's game, as in game 3 he scored 12 points in the 4th quarter to give the Knicks the win, and then in game 6 he hit the game winning 3 to give the Knicks the series. New York did a great job at keeping Cade Cunningham at bay. He still averaged 25 points, but he only shot 43% from the field and 18% from 3-point range. Now, let's break down the Knicks versus Celtics series. The Celtics swept the season series with a plus 67 point differential, or in other words, won each game by an average of 17 points. As we know, the Celtics shoot the most threes in the NBA and are among one of the best teams at doing so. The Knicks were at the top half of the league in defending the above the break 3, but that was not the case in the season series, where Boston hit 3-pointers at a 43% clip from above the break and 45% from the corners. So why did the Knicks have such a big drop off in 3-point defense when playing the Celtics this season? Well, the Celtics get their threes off of Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum isolation plays, where they kick the ball out to Derek White, Al Horford, and others for open spot up threes. 26% of the time Tatum has the ball, he runs isolation, and that's 15% for Jaylen Brown. Derek White, Peyton Pritchard, Al Horford, Sam Hauser, and Drew Holiday took spot up shots on over 30% of their shot attempts this season. The Knicks were 8th at defending spot-up shooters in the final round of the playoffs, but the competition was not nearly as fierce against Detroit as it will be against Boston in that scenario. The Knicks loved to run in transition during the regular season, where they're actually the worst team at finishing. This gets even worse because the Celtics were also the second best team in the NBA this year at defending teams in transition. The Knicks were also one of the best spot-up shooting teams, but guess what? The Celtics were the best defense against spot-up shooters. The only real advantage New York has in this series is their ability to grab offensive boards and force turnovers. But guess what? The Celtics turned the ball over the least amount of time in the entire NBA. So really the good news is neither of these teams give up shooting fouls. So hopefully that means these games move quick, because I'm taking Boston. It's very tough to find anything at all that makes me think New York will even win a game unless Boston starts resting starters in preparation for the Eastern Conference Finals. So that's the breakdown of the second round series that we have so far. We'll make a video for the Minnesota series after tonight, after Golden State beats Houston, because I'm only wrong when I pick Lakers. We'll be back in a couple more days with a baseball video because I don't have to see Kendrick Lamar this week. We're also going to be working on a fantasy football video breaking down these rookies on their new NFL teams that they landed on after the draft and how that'll affect your fantasy team so you don't get screwed by these other guys who act like they know what they're talking about. So pay attention to that. I'll break it down for the 2025 season and also Dynasty. Until then, I'll see y'all later. Peace.